Guys, if this video gets, let's say 500 likes, I will do a Palworld Smash or Pass. Now, unless you've been hiding under a rock, you have probably heard of the game called Palworld. We've even done a couple videos on it ourselves. This is one of those games that came out and is basically what happens if Pokemon had a beautiful love baby with arc and guns. Lots of guns. You build bases, it's basically what the entirety of the gaming sphere have been looking for from a Pokemon game for a very long time. But the people who made Pokemon are as inclined of listening to their community as I am to not having a conniption every 5 minutes. So it's no surprise that when this came out, the entire internet lost their collective minds and actually started enjoying it and are giving praise for people doing what they want. But the question is, how? How and why did this become so popular so quickly? A question that the philosophers of our future shall surely be asking in a million years when the remnants of the Pokemon franchise are smoldering and the superior Palworld will be on its 19th chapter. So, we're going to do a bit of a deep dive. We are going to be looking into the question and answer as to why Palworld has become so popular. In my mind, I do believe it is because of what I said a second ago. It is a craving and a demand that has been met by a company that is willing to listen versus a company that has been stagnant for multiple years. But I guess we'll see what the video we watch has to say about this. Yo, Palworld, hey? Palworld, we all like Palworld, right? I mean, judging by how many people have been playing on the server for our community, which, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, you guys should go join our Discord and join our community Palworld server. Just saying. So we have a video that kind of explains everything that I was kind of looking at and talking about earlier in regards to why Palworld is so popular. And it's by our favorite buddy, the Act Man. So let's see what this gentleman has to say. He's a scholar. I want to see what he has to say. I wonder if his postulation is the same as mine. Ah, yes. The Battle of the Century. The ages of future will... Guys, I'm gonna be $1.50. I haven't liked any of the Pokemon designs in the last 2 seasons. Like, Pokemon Sword and Shield, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, whoever they have in charge of the designs at Game Freak, they are just a goddamn... Sorry, I'm sidetracked. Let's focus on the video. This is not a video about me ranting about Game Freak's intellectual bankruptcy. Yeah. So before we start, how many of you guys want to take a guess and say that the entire comments on this are the Pokemon stands who are like, don't bully the multi-billion-dollar company. They're trying their best. They're just a small indie studio. Actually, something I wanted to mention, this game reminds me a lot of Dauntless, the Monster Hunter world, the Monster Hunter free-to-play version kind of game. Got very similar graphics, I suppose it's because they're made in the same engine.
Pokemon with guns.
Yeah!
2 words that will pique your immediate curiosity and interest.
Like,
props to whoever came up with
in
this
your
phrase.
mind,
Could have been
that
some
shouldn't
random
work.
On the internet or the Albert Einstein.
Like, in your mind, you think of, Pokemon with guns, that sounds stupid. But they make it work. Like, the gunplay in this is unironically hysterically good. Like, everything about this game you think is like, that's stupid. That would never work together. But wait.
Of marketing, because good God, Palworld is doing numbers.
Oh, it certainly is.
If you've been on the internet in the last couple of weeks, you've no doubt heard about Palworld.
Whoa, no, I haven't, but please tell me more.
What the fuck? Yo, look at me, dude. I can pick up a
yes.
big toys.
Peak character design. I see that he went to my school of how to design your characters.
Why do you
The
think
Dark Souls 3 character creator of
Why do you think? And today, this is the question I'm going to answer.
Character design.
Why is Palworld so popular? And awesome. I've compiled 8 reasons why in this very video. Reason number 1. Word of mouth.
It is Hex. It's on my necklace.
Has surprised everyone, especially its developers, who apparently were considering bankruptcy if the
okay. So they made Craftopia. Craftopia had to fail so Palworld could run. I don't think Palworld was ever going to not be at least a success. I just don't think they were predicting how much of a success it was going to be. I think there was a big postulation here that people were expecting it to be too... Like, they hit the memery mark right on the line. They made enough of a satire and enough of a meme so that people were like, haha, funny! But they didn't make it so memey that people couldn't take it seriously. People saw the elements of survival with the arc combat and the Pokemon elements and were like, but what if this does end up being good? Which... If you want to know why this works, it's because they created intrigue. They did something that was outlandishly different that had never been done before. And this all, like, ties into itself at some point. And it's the fact that they were willing to do something that people hadn't seen, that people had been waiting for. And although people were probably very, you know, cynical and probably very untrustworthy, it was memey enough to be funny, to create interest. But it was serious enough to the fact that people were thinking to themselves, what if this does end up being good? What if this is a game? For the time being, in the short term, I can laugh at it and be, haha, funny, stupid things. But in the long term, maybe I will enjoy this.
Game didn't sell well. I don't think they have to worry about
Thank you
that
for the resub.
anymore.
Looks like there's been a change of plans.
This game's trailers did not attract a sort of viral attention. And so what I think we're witnessing...
Are you kidding?
Is
Dude,
one of the most successful
these trailers were
word-of-mouth
goated.
campaigns in video game history. Pokemon
Like,
with
we
guns
saw these on
is what
stream
got me
together
to
and we were
check
like,
out
oh my god, this is gonna be
Palworld.
the best thing ever or the worst thing in
I'm talking to all of you
existence.
about it. Okay, yeah, come up here.
Either way, no matter the success of this game, we will
See
succeed.
these chickens?
But the game is literally, like, this game is the epitome of how you balance sort of, I say hyper-realistic graphics, but still make it cartoony. Like, good graphics, but still cartoony. Sonic. Learn a thing or two, Sonic.
What chicken? Oh my god, they're doing... Oh shit. Oh, Jesus
Ah, yes, my favorite
We were so
mech
close.
game.
These are cannons, Blastoise. These are cannons, not firearms. We're so close. I'd say
I mean, let's face it, Pokemon is obviously designed much more with kids in mind. It wouldn't exactly work well with the parents' demographic.
The explosive popularity
parents
of
wouldn't let them
Palworld
watch
is
it.
unheard of in the world of gaming. It's
If,
like the polar
if they were
opposite
shooting
of the
guns.
day before. Fuck that game. Palworld has...
I mean, there was that question, right? Like, this game was so abstract and obscure and weird. There was that big question of, was this just going to be a scam? Were they going to release the game and run with the money? I mean, the developers had been known for doing that before with some games. Like, they'd release a game, give it a little bit of support, but then after it would sort of fade out in a little bit, they just abandon it entirely. So I'm hoping that because this game is so successful, they're going to keep going with it.
reached power levels that seemed impossible, hitting over 2 million
2
concurrent
million?
players on
Whoa!
Steam. It's impossible.
Isn't that like
That is
the...
second only to PUBG, the game that
Sheesh.
arguably popularized the entire battle royale genre. That's more concurrent.
Ooh, you would, wouldn't you? Oh, you would. You would use that clip, wouldn't you? Man, I wonder what 2019 PewDiePie would think of 2024 PewDiePie. If any of you guys have been watching PewDiePie's art journey recently, it's been an inspiration. This was a man who was having a midlife crisis. PewDiePie these days, based, level-headed, and the epitome of someone who's got far too much time on their hands.
That's more concurrent players than Counter-Strike.
Sheesh.
Fucking Counter-Strike has ever had.
Okay, so Palworld
What is
eSport
happening?
when?
Do you understand how crazy this is? Palworld sold over 8 million copies in less than a week. Probably more by
God.
the time you're watching this. For reference,
19
Scarlet and
million?
Violet sold 10 million copies on the first 3 days, and that was
Eat
Nintendo's
shit,
biggest
Pokemon.
game launch of all time.
And there was much
That is truly the epitome of what I was saying. That really does go to show how starved the Pokemon franchise was for innovation and something that was new and actually had some passion put into it. You cannot, like, you look at Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, they were a mess on their launch. It wasn't just the sloppiness, but the fact that the from a multi-billion-dollar company, how sloppy the game was more of a dash to the audience's trust than it was anything else. Like, how little innovation there was, with how little there of an imprint. Like, sure, if you want to play the same game over and over again with a couple of extra bells and whistles here and that's great. I mean, you always get more of the same thing. Like, more of the same thing is always nice. But having something new and outside that box helps innovate. And the trouble is, with how sloppy Scarlet and Violet were on launch from a multi-billion-dollar community, all it did was create apathy. And if there's one thing that kills a franchise, it's apathy. If there's no trust from the audience, people aren't going to have faith in the product anymore. And that kind of shows with freaking Palworld. Palworld is doing everything. Palworld is doing everything that Pokemon should have done in the last 5 years. And it shows with the numbers. It shows with how eager people are for it.
And there was much rejoicing.
This isn't just insane. It is insane in the membrane.
Whoa, the
that
membrane?
A random indie developer can come out with a creature catching game that rivals that of the largest media franchise of all time.
And in one attempt as well. One attempt. This wasn't even like a sequel. Think about it. Some games have to build themselves out to get this. The fact this was an instant thing. Like, a lot of people, I think in the first couple of days, the people who bought it were like, let's see what these memes are all about. And then all of a sudden they were like, whoa, this is actually pretty freaking good. And that was then everyone else's turn point to be like, yo, we taking this game seriously? Yo, is this actually the Pokemon game we've all been waiting for? Spoilers, it was. Which is why it's done the numbers.
Keep up with it in sales, relatively. Reason number 2, why Palworld is so popular. This is an easy one. It's a damn good video game.
Yeah.
Palworld
I mean, it's got its bugs, let's face it. The developers are not exactly big. Like, even with Craftopia, they have they're an indie studio at best. Maybe AA studio at best. So obviously, when you've got a game with this kind of scope, you know, it's gonna have issues. That's just the way it goes. Like, small studios do not have the QA of, you know, your big names. But if anything, that's more of a reason why friggin' Game Freak and Nintendo should be ashamed of what they've been putting out. The fact that Palworld, a game from a studio that's the size of the average incel's dick, kind of emphasizes the fact that there's no excuse why a game like Pokemon Scarlet or Scarlet and whatever should be that sloppy. There's no reason at all.
is like Cell. It combines the DNA from all these popular games in different genres to become this fucking supreme super being. You've got the cartoony art style gliding and third-person shooter combat of Fortnite. They even have shields in this.
I was about to say, I like that comparison. I really like that comparison. This has the same vibe as when Fortnite popped off. And you want to know what always draws in that conclusion of why something becomes popular? It's because it's something that tries something different, something that innovates, and something that has... And let's face it. Child-friendly, cartoony graphics will always draw in an audience. It's why Fortnite was so popular. It's why anything that ever ends up being popular, Skibbity Toilet, fucking anything that is like loud equals funny or bright shiny. It's like dangling some shiny keys in front of a toddler, right? It doesn't matter what it is. So long as it's cheap or free, and so long as it's cartoony and whimsical, it works. That was what actually predicated Pokemon being successful in the early days. It was cute. It was fluffy. It was colorful. It was everything that kids loved. They finally had something that they could relate to that was cute, fluffy, and, you know, fantastical. And I guess that's kind of why this works in the same sense.
This sick-ass butterfly twist, by the way.
What the fuck was that?
It doesn't take
like
itself
the
so
Darth Maul
seriously that
butterfly
it's
kit.
like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, kids
Oh,
won't want to play. It's memes enough so that the kids of the Mon generation will be like, ooh, memes, skibbity toilet, skibbity butt.
Oh, you do a backflip.
But there's enough
The crafting,
seriousness
base
with the
building,
crafting and the
survival
adult content,
mechanics
even
of
adults will play it.
Valheim, Minecraft,
But it's
and art.
cartoony and
You have
Pokemon
open
enough
world
that the kids will like it. This is a game for
little too
all
similar
ages.
to Breath of the Wild, with multiplayer guilds. Fuck it, throw a grapple hook in there too.
There's a grapple
Hey, you
hook?
wanna ride a fat alpaca while shooting a musket? Sure. They even let players make abominations in the character creator. I shit you not.
I seriously hope they expand on the body creation process. Because my god, I think this is only the beginning. I want to have the ability to make the worst monstrosities imaginable. And if the body becomes so incapable of moving that it shouldn't, and you start getting glitched textures, fucking let me do it anyway. Let the memes be dreams.
Not because they said Americans sometimes like to make ugly characters. And while you might think it's easy to take ideas and inspiration from all these different places, throw it in a blender and hope it turns out great, Halo 4 taught us that doesn't always pan out well. We've seen plenty of copycat games, right? Doom clones,
yes.
Halo killers, etc. And most—
Let's not forget back in the early 2010s, how every other year there was going to be the WoW killer.
of the time, these games live in the shadow of their inspiration, but we are witnessing something truly magical. Palworld is actually competing with its inspiration. It combines so many different elements of other games.
There is an element that I don't think he's going to capitalize on, and it's one that's actually pertinent to this. Fan service. Furries. People like perversing cute, innocent things. And if the Pokemon franchise is anything to judge by, if you bring out a game that has animals, Pokemon-like things, of course the furries are going to instantaneously be like, oh, I'm going to make my OC based around that character. It's about relatability. If you make something relatable, if you make something that people can immerse themselves in, there's more, like, it's all about making it as approachable as possible. And these guys knew that. These guys leaned on that so heavily. Lest we forget about the PAL 69, friggin' Lavander, I think it was called. And the amount of, like, there are some PALs in this game that you can 100% tell that when they were designing them, they were like, ah, yes, the internet will surely love this one.
That it actually becomes unique, like Cell. For a game that feels like one giant
Don't knock the fact that fan service is a big free marketing ploy. Like, if people are willing to make artwork because you made a sexy thing in your game, it's free advertising.
Free. Are you serious? Wow. This game isn't real. There's so many ways to upgrade your pals and optimize them.
Yo, Kodak,
it's
thanks
a
for
much
following.
less time-consuming, tedious
Okay,
process.
I haven't gotten this far. I'm still relatively early in the game, so this is all a bit new to me.
Regular Pokemon games, like the way you power pals up, is better and more fun.
Yes, I totally agree with that. This is something that Pokemon's been needed to innovate on for ages. Like, you catch a Pokemon and it's basically a black and white with maybe 1 or 2 extra abilities you can get. Pokemon needs to make the way you interact with your Pokemon more dynamic. There needs to be a way of implementing more personalized adjustments to that character. Or to that Pokemon, sorry. Nitro, I'm going to ask a very humble request. Please don't do that. We're recording something. But thank you. At least wait till the video is over.
Then modern Pokemon. What are the offer
Pokemon has needed something like this for a long time.
That's dark.
You have all sorts of different passives, positive
Wood.
and negative traits. There's a ton of different moves that pals
Guys, if this video gets, let's say 500 likes, I will do a Palworld Smash or Pass.
can learn, which happen in real-time combat instead of turn-based. So, like, you actually have to aim this shit if you're controlling the pal, which you can control a whole lot of them. The PvP for this game is going to be
I love the fact they're using the Pokemon on that music from Pokemon Blue and Red.
You know, micromanaging your base with pals and the tasks you give them. It reminds me of managing villages.
I'm not a furry, but
Me of managing villagers in Age
dude,
of
I made
Empires
this
2.
comment when we were playing for the very first. There she is. There she is. Oh my god. Breeding? That's right. She'll breed you, whether you're looking for it or not. I made this comment actually when we were playing the game for the first time. I said that playing Palworld, or even survival games like this, feels like an RTS. It feels like you are building up a base, going through the tech trees. It has that same cathartic element of progression. And that was one of the big selling points for me. In fact, I really want to play this game maybe today sometime.
There's like a little real-time strategy to it.
There is, unironically.
Resource gathering, base building, and PAL training are all things you can invest a
look
lot
at them
of
getting
time
each other
into
wet.
And get a
Like
huge
the
return
best
on investment.
mud wrestling,
This game
water
is way better
bikini
than
wrestling
it has
pit.
any reason to be.
I'm not
And
a
that
perv, promise.
leads me to reason number 3. The content and polish. This is early access done right. When you combine
Yes,
the phrase
dude,
early
people keep forgetting this game is still early access. This game isn't even fully released yet. This was just their way of saying, hey guys, you can jump on the game now if you want. And the fact that it's like this at this point, dude, this is one of those rare times where a game releasing in early development has done itself justice. Because I can guarantee you the money they make from this now is going to help the game have so much more polish in the future. They're going to hire more people. They're going to get better quality control. They're going to put much more into it. A lot of the time when a game is released in early alpha, it reeks of desperation. And sure, sometimes the money you make can help develop the game, but here's the big problem, and this is something that a lot of people don't quite recognize. When you release a game in early alpha, you are blowing your proverbial load. You can only make an impression once. And once people have had that impression, they're not as likely to come back. The best examples I can make of this, Dauntless, Spellbreak, both of these games were, and still are, good. One of them did shut down, but that's beside the point. The point is, both of these games released with bare minimal content. So obviously, initially, people were like, okay, that's kind of cool. But because the threshold was so low, because there wasn't enough to keep people around, the attention got dropped so quickly. And because of that, now, even if they were to release themselves in their fullest form, they would never garner that same kind of attention because people already have their preconceived notion of what the game is like. You cannot capture lightning in a bottle twice. You have to make sure that the first thing you release makes the biggest impact possible. If you are going to do an open alpha, or if you release the game too soon, or if you do what Warframe does and tease too much too early, nobody's going to give a shit about the game in its fullest form. It's unfortunately the catch-22 of the thing. Like, you want to get attention, so you need money, but to get money, you need attention. To get attention, you need money. But the second you get money, you no longer have attention because you've released the game early. You can build up from there. A good example, somebody just said No Man's Sky. You can build back from that, but it's very rare. For every one No Man's Sky, there's 30 other games that have tried an early release and failed. It does happen, but very rarely. And I think that's something that not many people have spoken about with this.
It's a recipe for disaster. But Palworld defies the stereotypes around early access titles because...
And again, it just works.
Somehow it's more stable and polished than a lot of AAA games manage to be.
Oh boy.
The gameplay is solid, and that's most important.
I think that's something that what he just said, that's very true. Games like this, games like Baldur's Gate 3, and there are a lot of indie games that have come out recently that are putting the AAA franchises to fucking shame. The fact that you can get small indie studios with 1/10 of the budget putting out this kind of stuff puts all these AAA developers in it. Now, there is a slight analogy here that I think that not many people talk about that can be spoken about in the favor of the AAA developers. And there's a reason why this happens. And I think it's important to at least take this into consideration in the fact that when you have a smaller studio, there are, let's just say, for example, how do I do this again? Yeah. So let's just say, for example, up top here in green, this is your AA, this is your indie. This is your indie pipeline. This is your indie developer. To them, they are dealing with pre-production and then post-production. There are very few cogs in this wheel, in this process to get to the end. And this is something that kind of pays dividends when you think about how a game is released. That is a very simple process. Very simple from start to finish. There's not many things that come between the beginning and the end. But when you look at a AAA studio making a game, you've got pre-production, you've got post-production, you've got the higher-ups, you've got marketing, you've got focus groups, you've got all these other mechanics, and if one of these fails, then it has to be taken all the way back to the beginning and constantly recycled, and then eventually the process of getting to the end becomes so much more of a tangled maze with convoluted overlaps and problems intersecting with each other. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. So it's not much. It's almost like success is a bane in of itself, because when you add too many cogs to the wheel, when you are successful to a point where you have to uphold a standard, sometimes having that success means you have to implore so many elements to that process that the bureaucracy of it all dampens the process. And I think that is something that AAA developers are not willing to acknowledge. Sometimes it's, yeah, I mean, and even on top of that, there's also greed, pride. There's the ignorance. There's the blatant just apathy and lack of care. For the sake of and passion. Just talk about passion. There's so, and all these extra things I'm saying are just extra cogs in the wheel. When you think about the indie, they have a simple idea, a simple concept, a simple process, because that's what they want to do. They set out with this idea because there's no shareholders really to kind of pander to. There's no apprehension. Indie developers have it slightly easier than AAA just for the sheer, or at least in process. The process for indie developers is not bogged down by bureaucracy or as much as what a AAA developer would. So this explains not only why AAA developers might end up having to put out shit. I will say, for all the conversation about complexity, 90% of this does also come down to just blind ignorance. AAA developers just don't care. They had money before. They will have money afterwards more often than not. Like, a lot of these companies like EA, Blizzard, they are too big to fail. Even if they put out something that does not work, they are still going to have money afterwards. Whereas an indie developer, they have much more on the line. So they have more of an urgency to make sure what they do is what people want and comes out in a way that people will like. And there's a lot of minutia that goes into that with indie versus AAA, but that maybe that hopefully kind of analogizes it slightly for you to help you understand why this kind of stuff works. Anyway, let's keep it going.
Them in real time, avoiding attacks. Palworld nails the fundamentals and provides a ton of content at the same time. It makes the trainer an active participant in the Pokemon formula. And
how many of you guys have ever watched Pokemon and thought to yourself, wow, why didn't they just run in there and punch them?
Above what most people
Flash Gets
expect
made a
from
reference
an
to that.
early access title. It feels complete in concept, and because of that, I'm not too bothered by the rougher areas of the game.
I agree.
Multiplayer and guilds are a great feature. I played a shitload of Valheim, and just like that, Palworld is something me and the boys are gonna keep playing for a very long time.
Great.
But
I know I will.
stability is by far
the thing is, with indie developers
concern.
as well, the audience is usually a little bit more lenient towards scuff, because you kind of expect that. Like, you're not gonna have the same expectations from a AA developer as you would a AAA developer. So, you know, and especially if the developers are honest, like they'll be like, oh yeah, no guys, we're not trying to market this thing as this flawless game. Like, conceptually, an early alpha is always going to be, here's the concept, here's the idea. Yeah, it's not perfect. Yeah, it's got a bit rough around the edges. But here, have some fun with it. Usually, AAA developers are then going to be like, all right, guys, here's the early access. It's the best thing since sliced bread. There's nothing wrong with this whatsoever. And if you think that it's wrong, you're just an ignorant fuckboy. Go fuck yourself, Todd Howard.
As it's pretty
We're not wrong,
compared to
you're
flying
wrong.
Solo. There's a few animations that could use some work. All right, check this shit. Check this shit.
Oh no. I at least thought like you'd be on her head or something.
And yet, this is still
But I'm
smoother
torn between
animations than
wanting smooth
Warframe's
animations
Plains of Eidolon when
and
it
this
launched.
janky, funny shit.
Yes, as we find, the
There's quite a
Lavander is
few
definitely a
moves,
top.
Attacks and equipment that don't have any sound effects yet, but still function somewhat. Occasionally, you can spawn
The
underneath
thing is, though,
the map,
scuff like
but
this
any
makes games
game-breaking glitches
endearing.
I've found can be fixed by quitting and reloading.
Lest
Another
we not
huge
talk
issue
about
is
fucking Escape from
things
Tarkov and the scuff
phasing
from
or
that
clipping
game.
into the world.
Sometimes this kind of stuff makes the game endearing and makes you like, haha, that's
They
cute.
don't always know
Hi,
what
Warthog.
to do or where they're going.
Hi, Tia.
And the police. Yes, there are police in Palworld. This game has a fucking wanted
Yeah,
system.
well, man, dude, he did the same thing I did. I literally did this myself. I tried capturing her, and the police were like, "Nah, mate, you're going to the Bobby, mate. You're going to the Bobby. You're being reported for shanking without a license."
Path on the loose. Stop! You violated the law.
How was I supposed? The game is like, oh yeah, no, you can definitely enslave people and create slavery if you want,
What's the matter?
but there is
Getting
repercussions.
If you attack non-hostile NPCs,
Okay.
the police will spawn in your anus like they used to in Cyberpunk. They will follow you no matter where you fast travel. So you either let them kill you or you quit and reload the game. One of the greatest features ever in survival games is being able to...
You might think that getting wanted is bad. Did you ever consider that being wanted is merely free reinforcements? You get yourself a wanted logo. You go to a place you've been struggling with, and you take those guards with you and get them to fight each other.
travel. So you either let them kill you or you quit and reload the game. One of the greatest features ever in survival games is being able to access
A
all of your stored
gigasphere?
materials without
Dude,
having
that
them in
naming
your
convention.
inventory. So you can build, craft, and do whatever the fuck you want without actually going to the box and picking it up and then doing it. Palworld does the one thing that every video game should strive to do: give you bang for your buck.
Yes,
Which is why reason 4
something a lot of games at the moment don't do. Most games, unless stated otherwise, should be a power fantasy. Something that Warframe and a bunch of other games have been struggling with is removing that agency of power. If you are playing a game with no competitive edge, where it is entirely about power and fantasy, stop nerfing things. Stop trying to have agency over how the player has fun. The player should decide what it is they want to do. Yes, everything should be powerful enough that it's gonna do good damage and live up to the standard of what you're doing. But why nerf things that people are having fun with? Like, you should be letting the player make the decision for themselves rather than trying to shoehorn them into playing the game the way you want to. That is not the responsibility of the developer. It is the responsibility of the developer to make a game that facilitates the needs of the player. And I feel like that's where a lot of games just drop the ball a lot, is they start making the decisions for the player rather than letting the player make the decisions.
it undercuts the competition.
Like, Warframe
Scarlet
has
and
made so
Violet
many
have been out
nerfs
for
to things that
14
people found
months,
fun because they
and they're
didn't see it
still
as, like,
charging $60 for 'em.
optimal.
$60 for that pig slop.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about. Multi-billion-dollar company, guys. Multi-billion-dollar
Did I mention
company.
they're also
Don't be mean to them, guys. Don't be
double
mean to them.
DLC? They're selling the same DLC twice, which by itself is still pricier than Palworld. In fact, every Pokemon game on Switch is pricier than Palworld. So Palworld is affordable. You can
I
play
get
on
why
PC
games are that expensive.
or
I do.
Xbox with Game Pass. It has
But
a small file
being
size. It's
predatory
easy to
whilst doing
understand.
that?
You don't need a top-of-the-line PC to run it. It checks almost every accessibility box. Not to mention, there has never been an official Pokemon game released on PC. To be fair, Nintendo doesn't really release games on PC at all, but
You know what I think?
would-
I think Nintendo are the epitome of an outdated company. Like, Nintendo, EA, Ubisoft, the companies and studios that have not been willing to adapt to the modern audience. I think they are the epitome of that. Like, they are so ingrained in their old ways of doing things, they're kind of starting to be left behind. And it shows. Like, this game, Palworld, it shows that without failing.
I think the largest media franchise of all time would at least try to tap into that market. Reason number 5 why
It worked
Palworld
for us
is
in
so
1991,
popular.
and it's gonna work for us now.
Memeability.
Mercenary with a wounded knee. I used to be a tough trainer like you. Then I took to
Then I took an attack to the knee from that giant pal.
Oh, you
a Skyrim
suave
reference
bitch.
in 2024. What year is it? On the surface, Palworld presents itself with a cute, cartoony art style, located on a series of islands populated by such adorable critters.
Oh, look at them!
This
Look
island
at
is
them!
a
Look at the cute little monsters! Let's fucking kill them!
living hell. The people I came with aren't with us any longer.
Dude,
Those damn
that's the
pals.
thing. I talk about this a lot in movie telling and storytelling. How if you are trying to make something like really enthralling, have something that's really cute, really adorable, and then have really gritty undertones. Like, yeah, this all looks really cute and fluffy, but dude, these pals eat people. This is a gory ass game with a very misleading style. Like, you're like, oh, it's all Pokemon, and then you realize there's Vor. Then you realize they're all eating each other and murdering each other, and there's black marketness and shit like that.
I'll say every one of them. I tried making graves for everyone at first, but when more than 100 died, I gave up on that idea. What the fuck?
And now, standing on this mountain of brave corpses, I have quite the view.
The tone takes a radical shift towards the macabre at complete random. You know, one moment in Palworld, you're catching pals.
Yay!
And the next moment, they develop an eating disorder or have broken their legs. What? You can force them to work under normal, cruel, or brutal conditions.
Guys, if they're not working hard, they're hardly working. Put those bitches to work. They chose their lot in life. They chose to get captured by you. So they have the responsibility of keeping up with the demand. We can't keep producing Makari merchandise when we're only working normally. We cannot keep up with demand that way.
No one's in the wrong here. There was nothing to be done. We had no choice in all this. Because this world is just that cruel.
You don't just fight pals, you can fight real people. And you don't defeat them, you kill them. When I think to myself,
Dude, could you imagine? Could you imagine in Pokemon? Like, the only time, actually, do you remember the only time in Pokemon they ever really dealt with the concept of death was Lavender Town, I guess, kind of. Like, imagine if you're fighting a Pokemon and rather than saying, Cubone fainted, it said, Cubone was viscerated and died. Cubone was taken to the hospital and died on the operating table.
what is it about me as a Pokemon fan that is drawn to Palworld? Part of it is the dark undertones
Yes!
of Pokemon that
Yes,
mostly
absolutely!
go unaddressed. And this is like a satire of that. On the main menu screen, you've got 2 lamb balls on mounted MG42s. There's a pal called Hang You, which in universe is used to carry out public executions by tearing the skin off of their bones.
Jesus Christ.
Like, I know some of the Pokemon descriptions are kind of dark sometimes. Like, you read too much into Pokemon and even that gets kind of gritty. But Jesus, that's literally an anthropomorphic noose!
Palworld is popular partially because it allows you to do things that Game Freak would never.
You know what? This all can be, like, boiled down to Palworld just don't give a damn. Palworld don't give a damn what you think. If Palworld's gonna do something, Palworld's gonna do it.
Never even consider implementing in a Pokemon game. You know, some areas look like they're from a Pokemon game, but then you go to the volcano biome
And some areas look like they're from Elden Ring.
Demon ruins from fucking Dark Souls.
Oh god.
What is
Yep,
this?
see?
There's an organization called the Free Pal Alliance. We have 5
Peter?
traditional commandments. Thou must not eat pals. Thou must not overwork pals. Thou must not abuse pals.
Yeah, that's just Peter. Peter, the noose is here.
Thou must not use pals for experiments. Thou must risk thy life to protect pals. And it sounds like a parody of PETA, right? But it's actually an accurate
What did I say?
representation of
What
PETA
did I say?
because the
Knew
Free
it.
Pal Alliance can often be seen shooting and murdering pals.
What?
I think I love being caught completely off guard and not knowing what to make of this game at any given moment. Palworld is a very funny game, and it's easy for it to spread like wildfire when there's so many meme-worthy moments you
Absolutely.
can create. Look at the way it fucking walks. Oh my god.
Come on.
Yes, queen. I'm gonna fuck your mom tonight. Oh, she's gonna love it. Yes, queen. Gonna be breeding. Yes. Literally. I guarantee you, this thing right here is why 70% of people played this game. They were like, but can I get bread? To which Palworld was like, yes. Yes, you can. She's walking with as much sass as I do, going for a friggin' hot dog. I am gonna get that glizzy!
Furry bait?
What did I say? Aware. Oh wait, guys, this is not pre-watched. I swear to God, I am just really good at predicting things.
It's absolutely furry bait.
What did I say though? Like, people don't understand just how much power furries have. People don't understand the power of horny. People don't understand the power of fandoms. Fandoms will sell products. If you pander to a fandom, you are likely going to draw in near enough all of that fandom. And what's one of the biggest fandoms on the planet? Furries! You may not like it. You may not want to admit it. But furries are huge. And most of them have such a disposable income because they all sit inside being antisocial fucks all the time. Like, the average furry is some IT genius who's got no real reason to go outside, so they sit indoors commissioning furry porn all the time. They've got no expenditure, so the only thing they're gonna do is play games that pander to their demographic or buy porn. I'm just saying.
Human breeding.
Stop right there.
And weebs. And weebs. Yeah, weebs as well.
You want to see something else?
Let's see.
It is number 69 in the PAL deck.
Of course it is.
Oh my god. That's fucking.
That-
Freaking thing on its crotch. the crotch tattoo.
It makes
Like-
sense.
If anybody doesn't say that this game is a parody game, they're just lying to themselves.
Reason number 6. The PALs. We can argue about plagiarism and the various designs and
So this
if
is the
some of them
one
are
part that
stolen
might be a
ideas or
little
not,
bit,
which
you know.
some of them are. Might cover that in a separate video, but most of them are original.
And this is the concept that YouTube needs to fucking learn, and it's called transformative. You can be inspired, and it can be transformative. Plagiarism only derives when it's a one-to-one copy or blatant plagiarism. If there is a very evident attempt at innovation and transformativeness, then there is no leg to stand on when it comes to making something. The only leg that Pokemon will ever have to stand on with, the only leg that they will ever have to stand on with any kind of lawsuit with this game is potentially maybe 1 or 2 designs. Because the line of plagiarism is quite a troublesome one. I can't remember where I left off because we got raided, but point is, plagiarism is a very hard-pressed thing to do, and the only thing that it'll say about Pokemon if they do decide to sue Palworld is how insecure they are about their own product. Because this is not plagiarism, this is innovation, inspiration, and it's very transformative.
And what really sells me on these PALs is the amount of animations they have and the detail of them. You know, Depresso, when he mines, looks absolutely
Bruh, me, after 54 days of doing a donathon, just like me, I see myself in this Pokemon.
hilarious. Moss Panda, before he chops lumber, does a little bow like a sensei.
That's kind of
The
cute.
PALs
Just
in
a little
this game
attention to
function
detail.
Exactly how you'd want Pokemon to function
Yes.
in a game like this.
You damn well
I'll
know
just
if
say,
they.
one of the things I like
and
about
here's
this
the thing,
game is
even if Pokemon does end up releasing something like this in the future because they now feel like they have to, like, I guarantee you, Pokemon are now going to be like, yeah, we dropped the ball, didn't we? They're either going to do one or two things. They're either going to be suddenly making a game of this nature and then own it as if like, oh no, we were always going to make a game like this. Always were. You know, a la Todd Howard style. Or they just double down and they don't bother. But I guarantee you, if Pokemon ever releases a game like this, it will never live up to the kind of quality of Palworld. Not to mention as well, The bubble's been burst by Palworld. No matter what Pokemon does to respond to Palworld existing, Pokemon will never make something as good as this. Very unlikely. And even if they do, what they put out would very likely have the same quality as what they've done with the most recent Pokemon games. Like, there just wouldn't be any heart behind it. It would be a egregious grab for attention to try and stay relevant.
You can use your pals for everything you'd want to in a Pokemon game, where, like, you know, instead of clicking to use the move, you like...
Caspar says Game Freak actually tried to soothe Palworld, but lost the lawsuit, which is a big win for transformative content. Game Freak needs to do better. Yeah, exactly. Well, I was just saying, the only reason, like, sure, it's similar. It's obviously satire, but it's not plagiarism. It's just, like, people know what and what isn't plagiarism. The only reason why Game Freak would ever sue them is because they feel threatened. And it's so hysterical. Multi-billion-dollar company threatened by small indie studio that's done what they should have done years ago. I mean, bureaucracy and drama of, like, AI, which is proven false, and plagiarism. Even with looking behind, like, that's a separate subject in itself, but I want Palworld to succeed. Much for the same reason all these other indie games recently should be succeeding and blowing up. Like, Lethal Company. These games need to succeed to put AAA games in their place.
Get on the pal and ride them to fly them, or you get on the pal and ride them.
They're
have them
part
use them.
of the world. And
Yeah,
how
they're
you
part of your
interact
kit.
with
Yes. So, like, the celery you can get, I didn't want to spoil this, but, like, I think you could literally use them to glide. Like,
Is
as
that a
paraglider.
Magnum?
Like, you can do shit with them that, like, you wouldn't think of. The
That Desert
millennial
Eagle?
audience of Pokemon is so massive. I don't know why they don't capitalize on it.
Because they haven't really had to. They haven't had to try.
Yeah. So this is something that a lot of games struggle with. If there's no competition, so competition breeds innovation. Get it? Breeding. When you have a monopoly, you have no reason to innovate. You have no reason to develop because you have the capital on everything. Why try something dangerous when you could just keep pumping out the same crap and know people are going to buy it? Look at Star Wars, World of Warcraft, Pokemon. A lot of these mainstream companies only keep pumping out the low-effort garbage because they know they can. Call of Duty, fucking anything of that nature, Counter-Strike, all of those kind of games that do the same thing over and over again because they know there's nothing out there that will compete with them. This, I would love to see what Pokemon does with this. Now that they know that they're not the only team out there that are making something good.
Keep getting, I mean, yeah.
No one's putting their fucking feet to the fire, but maybe now someone is.
Like, imagine if you took this exact idea and swapped out all the pals with real Pokemon. It would sell millions.
There's even a
Pokemon
mod.
fans would eat that shit up because
So actually, I don't know if I can assume that Actman recorded this a couple days ago.
Pokemon fans would idea and swap out all the pals with real Pokemon. It would sell. Imagine if you took this pals with real Pokemon.
What was that article?
Fans would. It would sell millions. Pokemon fans would Pokemon and swapped out. Like it.
There it is. This thing. This thing here. This was for. So this investigation was not to the game itself. It was the mod. Somebody made a mod putting Pokemon into Palworld. Palworld tried suing. Sorry, Pokemon tried suing Palworld, but the Pokemon suing Palworld was misconstrued, and it wasn't Palworld they were suing. It was the people who put Pokemon into Palworld. And technically, I guess that was a cease and desist against Palworld. But it wasn't a lawsuit. It was just to say, hey, can you not have Pokemon? Like, it was quintessential Nintendo and Pokemon being like, yeah, we're not going to let you have fun. Yeah, we don't like competition. Only we're allowed to have fun here. Again, if anything, that just even reeks more of desperation.
Like, imagine if you took this exact idea and swapped out all the pals with real Pokemon. It would sell millions.
It would.
Pokemon fans would eat that shit up because they have been so starved for
people are devoted to a franchise. Even like look at Star Wars. Like arguably Star Wars 7, 8, and 9 were atrocious. But people always go and watch them because it's got the word Star Wars on it. Sometimes people are so enamored by a franchise even if the next Star Wars movie was a literal rotating platform of dog feces, they would still go watch it because it had Star Wars on it. People are so enthralled by an IP and a name that they don't care what it is they produce just so long as it's got the name of what they enjoy on it. That's why Pokemon is still relevant.
Innovation and new ideas. You can utilize and control a huge number of the pals, which is one of my favorite features. They can work as gliders or gloves, or you can pull up Lamball and use him as a fucking shield. 111 pals, all designed with a unique ability. They all have unique animations for a variety of tasks.
I'm gonna be honest, looking at this makes me think of Genshin.
And animations for that too, you know? The personality conveyed through these animations
The average furry orgy.
is what sells you on Palworld. Meanwhile, Game Freak's animations.
Oh my goodness!
Reason number 7. Palworld is controversial. Nothing popular can ever
Oh yes,
avoid
another very valid concept. Controversy drives
many things like using
eyes.
AI, stealing designs, plagiarizing from Pokemon.
Where's Murkrow?
As the average Alinity or Amaranth stream would indicate, even bad attention is good attention, apparently. But drama and controversy does drive attention, so they knew how to... The thing is, Palworld knew how to draw the line. They knew where just enough was to stop.
Hello there.
Not to go over the line, but just short enough so that they could still be like, ah, ha, 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 you guys like a bit of juicy drama? So obviously I'm like, whoa, did these guys copy Pokemon? Like, you may not like it, you may not like Palworld, but you can't deny you've now heard of it because of the drama.
Nah, yeah, that's... Yo, it does have a hat. It has a hat too. That's fucking Murkrow. Yo, that's actually Murkrow.
Okay.
But it's different because it's Hoothoot instead.
Alright, that's a little sus.
Yeah, a crow with a hat, it is a little sus. The controversy only seems to be fueling.
I'm not going to get into the
people's
concept of like
interest and
transformativeness
attention to
and
this game,
owning
but if you
a
think Nintendo or Game Freak or the Pokemon
design,
company
if you
is going
will.
to sue Palworld and its
Because the line between how you
developers, they had a
define what
couple
is and
years
isn't
to do
plagiarism
that.
is kind of
They're not
odd
going
and
to.
would take way too long in
And
this
if they
video.
can take down this Pokemon mod for Palworld, why
Point
would
is,
they
Palworld
just
are very
take
smart. They
down
knew what
Palworld?
would and would
Reason
not be
number 8,
plagiarism.
This is the last
They
one,
knew how
and
to
it's
make something
big.
transformative enough to make it their own.
Fucking sucks right now.
$68, by the way. $68. Correction, $120 for the mandatory DLC you'd need to buy to then get the later content.
I have been a fan since Red and Blue version, and with 25 years of Pokemon experience under my Wumbo belt, I say with absolute 100% certainty that Scarlet and Violet are the worst Pokemon games in the entire franchise.
I agree.
Spin-offs
I agree.
included.
Like, Sword and Shield were kind of fun. Like, I played Sword and Shield as my first Pokemon game in probably about 5 or 6 years, and I kind of I played those, and I still had a bit of reminiscence of how much fun I had with the original Pokemon games. But after having not played a Pokemon game in almost like 5 years, it just felt the same. It felt like I was still playing Pokemon Blue and Yellow and Red, just with 3D. Which again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. If people like something, they're gonna want more of what they like. It's just inevitably people will want something better.
And they're the best selling. Palworld has innovated the Pokemon formula more than Pokemon itself has.
Pokemon is still
in the
like a
last-
DS game. I don't think that's really a good argument. Because if Nintendo were willing to upload to PC, sure. But they make Pokemon for the very outdated Switch. Like, they make it... here's the thing, and this is a different conversation about the ethics and limitations of consoles. Graphics are always hampered by the lowest common denominator. The weakest modern console is what drives down the development of every single game. Because if a game is being made for multiple platforms, they have to make it in mind with the weakest of those platforms. So when you have a jump in console generations, like when we get the Switch 2, or when we went from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4, or PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5, etc., every time you get a new generation of consoles, you tend to find that graphics across the entire spectrum of games goes up because the baseline has been raised. The minimum requirements of technology have been raised that allow you to accommodate better graphics. Now, that's not to say you can't do good things with fucking Switch. Look at the new Zelda game. Like, you can do great things with it, and it's just harder to do so. Like, Zelda pushed the limitations of the Switch to the max. The problem is Nintendo still have that same problem, but they're not willing to do what what Zelda did to make it look as good. And in some respects, that's kind of why Palworld has a slight advantage, because they're making this game for PC rather than Switch. Yeah, the point is, the argument of graphics isn't usually a good one, because that's more of a limitation of the platform and the whole ethics of graphical generation degradation. So, you know, that is what it is. And then it does make a difference, but you can't really compare because of how different platforms are limited.
Decade plus. Pokemon is the most static, lazy, apathetic franchise in gaming.
Is this Scarlet? Is this the new Pokemon?
Gaming. Palworld.
How do you make
Lazy,
such a
apathetic
freaking downgrade? How do you go from something so colorful, vibrant, and personality-driven to this? Who at Nintendo or Game Freak sat there, looked at this and said, yeah, you know what? That works. I too love having so much boredom in my life that my eyes want to rot out of my brain. Like, it baffles me. Like, I get that converting into a 3D world is kind of, you're gonna lose a bit of that like stage that you have with this kind of thing. But Palworld manages to make the combat look colorful and vibrant.
Palworld was made by people who learned how to use the Unreal Engine as they developed the game, and yet the game they've made is 15 years ahead in technology from Scarlet and Violet. Game Freak and the Pokemon Company haven't...
I don't dislike Pokemon games, but there is a reason why I prefer this to whatever the fuck the new Pokemon games are. I think when Pokemon left its top-down isometric nature and converted into 3D, it lost what made Pokemon so original and organic. I would actually prefer Pokemon to go back to this sort of like 2.5D element. This, to me, was peak Pokemon in terms of aesthetic. Just a little bit of 3D, still that original kind of composited, like, organic Pokemon that you remember. And it made it stylized, it made it cute, colorful, cartoony. And now fucking Pokemon Arceus and all these newer ones just look like they were produced by Clive Barker.
Haven't had to work. They haven't had to innovate or push the boundaries because they've had a monopoly on the creature-catching genre for 25 years.
Hey guys,
Palworld
you
is
like
the
Pokemon?
first real, genuine competition that Pokemon has had since its inception.
Exactly.
You know how I know that? Because I've only cared about
stagnation
Pokemon
breeds
since its
stagnation.
No other creature-catching games have caught my
Stagnation
attention.
breeds
The
ineptitude.
status quo and quality of the Pokemon franchise has gotten so abysmally low that I've gotten to the point where I'm secretly rooting for it. I don't want to secretly root
Thank you for the tier
its
3, dude.
downfall,
Appreciate it.
but I feel compelled to, given the complete lack of effort Game Freak and the Pokemon Company continue to show. Oh my god, what's this? It doesn't feel like acid is being poured into my face and eyes when
so this was the problem I had with Arceus. Arceus wanted to go down a bit more of a gritty, kind of like more open world environment, and I get it was an early attempt, but I'm sorry. Like, again, the comparison of PC versus Nintendo games, I know Nintendo is hampered, But Arceus and even Scarlet and the newer ones, like they have decent-ish gameplay, I guess, but everything just looks terrible. Like there's no color, there's no vibrancy. It's all flat and boring, and you can absolutely make these kind of worlds feel interesting and lively even with a Switch. We've seen that from friggin' Zelda and other Switch games.
Look at Palworld.
It's just laziness.
No
it's
way.
utter laziness from
Objects don't
Pokemon
disappear or
without a
render at
willingness
5
to
frames
try
per
and make.
second when they're
It's
2 feet
it's
away?
quality control. There's no willingness to make Pokemon look even in the areas in Pokemon that are supposed to have color. It looks desaturated and boring. And I don't know.
For me, holy shit! You can actually see the entire world if you go high enough. This kind of draw distance would be impressive.
I will say,
any-
I don't think that Actman comparing the graphics is very valid, just again because of the reason of like development origins. A game made for the Switch is never going to look as good as something that uses Unreal. Not really. I mean, if you go super hyper stylist, style can always outweigh graphics. It's why Team Fortress 2, even after 15 years, is still a gorgeous looking game. But, you know, ins and outs. But if anything, that's more about Pokemon's lack of innovation and lack of willing to try and make something that works.
game. Meanwhile, yeah, sure, Palworld was optimized for more powerful hardware
Thank you.
than the Switch.
Guys, I did not watch this.
Tears
I
of
did
Kingdom,
not pre-watch this.
Xenoblade, Smash Bros. Ultimate, Pikmin 4, Breath of the Wild.
Yes,
There's
thank
tons
you.
of examples of amazing looking games on the Switch. The hardware is clearly capable.
It is. It's
of
just laziness. It's the
that
epitome of
Game Freak
laziness.
and the Pokemon Company don't give a shit,
Yep.
or they haven't been given enough time to make something that looks even remotely.
I think that's a valid comment as well. Look at Call of Duty. If Call of Duty didn't release a game every goddamn year, I guarantee you the quality of the games they do put out would go up. Probably not by much, considering they just don't give a fuck anyway, and it's more about the ethics of how they make their game. But a big part of the reason why some of these games do look terrible is because the people they do have working on them are crunched to fuck. It's about trying to put the minimal amount of effort in possible to make a viable product to maximize the amount of money you get from it. Well, we could hire 200 staff members and make something better, but that costs money. What's the least amount of staff we need to hire to put out a functional game? Well, let's just get 50. They can still put something out. It might not be good or functional or be very well thought out, but people will still buy it because we're Pokemon.
You can literally take assets from Scarlet and Violet and drop them into Mario 64, and it doesn't look out of place.
Something's not right here.
This is why the Monopoly board game
Oh,
exists.
Actman, you're so
it
funny.
illustrates why Monopolies suck for consumers. You want a creature catching game? Your only choice is Pokemon. So they'll make it as shit.
Do you guys remember Pokemon Snap and Pokemon Stadium for the N64? Those were better open world Pokemon games than Pokemon Scarlet.
Shitty as they want to, and you will still buy it because there's no other options. Now you have an option. It's called fucking Palworld, and this is one of the biggest reasons why Palworld is so successful, because it is a great creature catching game.
It all
that
goes
does
back to what I was
feel
saying,
unique.
Elliot.
The catching mechanic
Palworld
plays
is willing
out
to
in
do
real
what
time.
Pokemon isn't.
A lot of fans praised Legends Arceus and hoped that would be the next direction.
I get that Arceus was meant to be a little bit more gritty, but even for a Nintendo game, it's like they looked at Zelda Breath of the Wild and were like, okay, we're gonna copy the homework a little bit, but not enough to make it look as good as what we want, but not little enough to be able to attain what we didn't want. Just pick a freaking lane. I know Arceus was kind of acclaimed for being pretty decent, and I get that, but it still looked terrible.
Formula. Isn't it ironic that evolution is such a critical component of Pokemon, and yet this series is incapable of it?
Arceus, I agree, was a step in the right direction. It's just a shame they didn't double down enough to really lean on it.
Every difficulty setting
It's like
in the entire
anytime Pokemon does try and do something that is even mildly innovative, they don't do it enough because they're too afraid of change. They're too afraid of trying something different in risk of it failing. And yet, I said this earlier, if you are a multi-billion-dollar company, you have the assets and the viability to actually make something that might not be a success. You actually have the fallback. Like if something isn't a success, you can at least do something else later. Whereas an indie company, they have one chance usually. If they release I mean, they even said it. The developers of Palworld were going to close if Palworld wasn't a success. They only managed to make Palworld because Craftopia was just enough of a success to fund Palworld.
Meanwhile, Game Freak is removing difficulty options that have existed since Gen 1. They actually force the easy mode on you through XP share. It's just Pokemon should have a difficulty setting. I don't want this to be like Diablo 3 and 4 where I have to beat the game to fucking be challenged by it. I hate that shit. Give me a difficulty option.
Okay, that goes into a different subject. I think accessibility and difficulty are a very different subject.
Game continues to streamline the games and make them as easy as possible so that 3-year-old toddlers can beat them.
That's I think that somebody in my chat just said this. EXP share is not difficult, it's grind. There is a big difference between what is difficult and what is just a grind. Something that is difficult is not like if something that is a tandem, something that is just a grind or tedious, that is not difficult, that's annoying. Something that's difficult should be a challenge. And you should at least have the ability to decide whether you want to have a challenge or not.
And they just want to force you to play easy mode. I hate that shit. Palworld has a level sync feature, so even if you catch something monstrously overpowered, it can't exceed your own level. That's a great way to balance the game. So a huge part of Palworld's success is this growing discontent between me and many other Pokemon fans who are just tired of the complacency, laziness, and incompetence at Game Freak and the Pokemon Company. So why is Palworld so popular? Well, for all the reasons I've been explaining for the last 25 to 30 minutes, silly. It's a solid, addicting game packed with tons of content that absolutely nails the fundamentals of everything it tries to be. And despite taking inspiration from every other game imaginable, Palworld manages to feel fresh and original. It's such a bizarre game. You have to tell your friends about it.
I think that was the biggest
spread the game through
issue that people might have had of it, is if the Palworld would just feel too much like Pokemon.
AAA titles, so naturally tons of people are going to pick it up, especially when it bears similarities to Pokemon. It's accessible, easy to learn, and most importantly,
I don't think, I mean, it was said already, I don't think Palworld's perfect. And there's obviously a lot of issues, but it is still very early development, so let's see where it goes, I guess.
Fans who have become hungry for change and innovation. I am excited for the future.
I love how
Palworld.
Actman has said everything that I've been saying, but in much more concise words.
A regular series if it...
Makari consider that Palworld has sold over 7 million copies already, and at 25 apiece that gives them about 122 mil after paying the Steam 30% and whatnot. In less than a month they achieved that.
Oh yes, we talked about that earlier. In fact, it's 18 million now. Very true though. Very true. We talked about the whole element of how they've that selling as much as they have, like making the game affordable and accessible in terms of the price. Means so this is something that I get, like the ethics of pricing something is kind of complicated, especially for bigger companies, because there's more that goes into developing something. But there is that dichotomy between making a game affordable and accessible versus pricey and validating the cost of development. I think in terms of games that are more indie, in terms of games that require people to be in them, if you need an MMO, if you need a game that is multiplayer, if you need a game that requires a community to populate its environment, I think it's much more important to make that game accessible and cheap so that you have asses in seats. Because once you have an audience that is captivated because you made it accessible, you are gonna make up, like, if you would have charged more, you would get less people buying it because it's outside their price range. But having it more affordable means more people buy it, so you make up that dividends by having more people buying the game.
Maintains this level of quality, and I especially hope this makes Game Freak and the Pokemon Company get off their fat, lazy asses and start making at least half the...
Spare me.
But what do you think? Are there any reasons for Palworld's
All right,
success
thank you,
and popularity
Actman.
that I didn't mention
Thank
here?
you for
Leave
literally
your
saying
thoughts and
everything that I've been
opinions
saying in
the comments
a few
below.
more
Like
concise words. Oh boy! Well, nice to know that my entire expectations of the game has been kind of validated. Well, what do you guys think, ladies and gentlemen? If you have thoughts on this, if you've been playing Palworld and you know what it's all about and you got your own opinion, please let me know down in the comments. If you just use this to validate your own opinion like I have, then also let me know. And if you feel like coming by the Twitch side of things, there'll be a link to my Twitch down below, or you can use the old search bar to find me as well. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video. More to come soon, and Twitch says you're cringe, so bye!